When you get born into this world, you're like this piece of tissue paper. You're pure, innocent, not knowing anything. And then you get born into a family. You begin to absorb whatever it is that you experience. You absorb what happens in your parents' life. You absorb what happens when you're a teenager, when you are young. So the question is, what did you absorb? Let us look at how your childhood, your upbringing affects your love life. Your upbringing can affect your trauma response. Trauma response is the way in which you react when things are difficult in your life. Now, there are 4 trauma responses. Which one is you? The first one is fight. This trauma response says that when things are difficult, you end up becoming combative. You end up attacking. You can attack either with insults, you raise your voice, you can become perhaps violent, you throw some things at someone, or you can slap someone or hit someone. So that's the trauma response of fight. You become harsh with your words. You can send some nasty messages or just retaliate because you feel attacked. The second trauma response is flight. So this suggests that when things are difficult, you take off. You take off. When the conversation doesn't go as you want, when it gets icy, when things get heated, you take a flight. You are out of that conversation. You are out of that scenario, out of that situation. That's flight response. The third trauma response is freeze. Freeze says that you are there, but you're not engaged. You are there, but you're not a participant in the conversation. You're not a participant in solution building. You are avoidant. You are present, yes. Somebody can see you, your spouse can see you present in their house. There is an issue, but you have frozen because things are difficult. And then the fourth and final one is fawn. F-A-W-N. This means that you appease to somebody when things get difficult. When things get difficult, you give people what they want, even though deep inside you are resentful. Deep inside you have reservations. You can end up apologizing even if you're not sorry. You give that person what they want. You give your spouse what he or she wants. You can say yes to something even though deep inside you're not saying yes. So you are appeasing. You're becoming a people pleaser, or in the context of love and marriage, you become a spouse pleaser, saying yes, yes, yes. You give your spouse that, even though that's not what you mean in your heart. Now, all of these 4 responses are deeply shaped by how you are when you're growing up. When you're growing up, when things got difficult, how did you react? Were you fighting? Were you flighting? Were you freezing? Were you fawning? Of the 4, which one are you? So it is for you to realize that, oh my goodness, this is how I respond when things get difficult, and you become aware that right now what it is that I'm doing in that, and then you counter that. So for example, if you are aware that right now you're in the fight response, you're like, hold back. I will not say those angry words when I'm hurt. I will not say those words when I'm disappointed. I will walk away. If it's the flight response, the moment you realize that, oh my goodness, I am actually just, running away from issues, you're like, you know what, let me get back and sort out this marital issue because it's not going anywhere. If you're on the freeze response, be like, let me push myself to engage. Let me push myself to talk. Let me push myself to be able to communicate what is in my heart and to seek solutions and to partner with my spouse in solution building. If it is the fawn response, you tell yourself, hey, let me not just be a yes spouse, just saying yes, 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 for the sake of fake peace. That is fake peace. It's not real peace. Let me train myself to be able to communicate my thoughts. And even if my spouse thinks this way, let me share my thoughts to my spouse this way, so that now we can be able to understand each other. Your trauma response is shaped by your upbringing, shaped by your childhood. Your upbringing can also make you compare your spouse with your parents. You start to tell your spouse, if it's your husband, my dad never acted like this. Why can't you be like my father? If you're a man, you start telling your wife, why can't you be like my mother? My mother never acted this way. When I grew up, I used to see my parents behave like this. Why can't you be like my parents? But what you need to realize is that you've already been plucked out of your parents' home. You're now building your home with your spouse, and your spouse is unique, different, separate from your parents. Instead of forcing your spouse to be like your parents, why don't you allow your spouse to be the best version of themselves? Stop comparing your spouse with your parents. In fact, I dare say this: whatever good things you saw in your dad or in your mom, you never got to see the other side, because you are only seeing your parents from a child-parent perspective. You never got to see your parents from a spouse perspective. It is only your it is only your mother, only your father who know the other person, how they truly were. So you have your own spouse. Focus on your spouse. Stop comparing. Your upbringing can also shape your view of the opposite gender. So how was your view towards your mother, towards your father? If your view towards your mother or your father wasn't so pleasant, you might end up projecting that to your spouse. If as a man you do not have such a favorable view of your mother, you might end up not having such a favorable view of your wife. If as a woman you don't have such a favorite view of your father, you might project that towards your man. You're almost expecting your husband to fail you the same way you saw your father fail your mother. Or sometimes, because of what we call the daddy wounds, you're looking for a father figure in your husband. You're looking for your husband to do things to you that you should have expected your father to do. And yet your husband is not your father. Your husband is partner. Your husband is somebody to do stuff with, not somebody to come and constantly rescue you when you are in trouble, but somebody to get out of trouble with you, to partner with you. If you're there, you are a man, you're expecting your wife to mother you. Your wife is not your mother. Your wife is your partner. She's not there to mother you and to sort out problems for you. She's there to help you sort out problems together with you, to be your helpmate, not your mother. So what kind of a view of your parents? And sometimes also the view of the negative of the opposite gender could have been shaped by your view of your siblings of the opposite gender. How was it? Well, did you have such a healthy view as a man with your sisters? A healthy view as a woman of your brothers? And are you seeing your husband or your wife based on that particular view? When you were perhaps a teenager, a young adult, what experiences did you encounter with the opposite gender? Are you still holding on to that? Have you fallen into the trap that is saying men are dogs, women are, fear women? Are you falling into that particular negative stereotype towards the opposite gender? And are you finding yourself extending that towards your spouse? As a man, are you looking at your wife in such negative light, like she is too emotional? She doesn't know much. What can she tell you as a woman? As a woman, do you have that negative view towards men that you go like, whatever a man do, I can do better. Men are this way, men are that way. Please heal from whatever negative view you picked along the way towards the opposite gender. Because if you do not, it will show in how you view your spouse. You are Alpha and Omega. We worship you alone. You are worthy to be praised. Oh, wow. So there you are. You believe that you are worshiping God. The thing about your upbringing is that it can make you think that your faith is better than your spouse's. Because you grew up in this upbringing where you are introduced to God a particular way, you might start to think that your faith, your denomination, is better, superior than your spouse's. You think you are closer to God than your spouse. You think you are more special, or perhaps you're even more committed to God than your spouse. You start to make statements such as, you don't pray that well. Your prayers are not that powerful. Are you really even born again? Are you really even saved? Are you really even a believer? So you start having this conflict between you and your spouse, informed by your upbringing, which made you think that your faith, your walk of faith, your denomination, the way you do matters of faith whilst growing up is better than your spouse's. Please know this. You're both worshiping the same God. You both have got unique testimonies. You both have walked two separate and distinct journeys of faith where God has shown himself to both of you differently. You both were perhaps brought up in different denominations. Even if it was the same denomination, it was a different experience. So respect that. Do not compare yourself. Do not feel entitled to God. Allow your spouse to pray the way he or she wants to pray, to express faith the way he or she would want to express, and you two come together as one body. They might be the arms, and you might be the neck. They might be the legs, and you might be the fingers. But the key thing is this: oneness in spirit. It's not about being uniform. It's about being united. So unite in spirit. Do not compare. Your upbringing can also shape your relationship with money. If you grew in lack, you might actually struggle to adjust when your season of thriving comes into play. So because you grew up where there was lack, there was shortage, even now as an adult that you are blessed, you can't allow your family to enjoy. You can't allow your family to enjoy the money that you work so hard for. You become stingy with your finances. You become very calculated. Or perhaps you grew up in abundance. So because you grew up in abundance, you do not know how to handle when tough financial seasons come. Remember this: your upbringing was your parents. That was your parent responsibility to take care of you, to provide and to do all of these things. Now that you are an adult, why don't you adjust to the season? If you're in the season of thriving, be appreciative that things are going well, that actually you can be able to provide. You can be able to take your children, your family, your spouse for holidays, for trips. You can enjoy yourselves and you can live in abundance. And if you're going through a financial challenge in your present, why don't you adjust that season? Even if you never knew lack when you were younger, adjust. Right now, this is not your parents' family. This is not your parents' home. This is your home. And so adjust to it. Whatever season you are, adjust to it. If things are difficult, then navigate it well. And if things are thriving, then learn how to enjoy your money. Learn how to also save. Learn how to invest. Learn to live in the present. Just because you suffered in your childhood doesn't mean that now your children have to endure the same suffering. You can teach children valuable lessons regarding money, regarding responsibility, without tormenting them and putting them through the same torture and the same bad experiences of lack that you endured. You can mentor without inflicting pain. Some grown-ups are afraid to admit they are wrong because when they were growing up, each time they admitted that they were wrong, it came with dire consequences. When they were younger, as soon as something they did was wrong, they made a mistake, it was catastrophic. The kind of treatment they received from their parents, their siblings, people around them was excruciatingly painful. It was intense. It was an overreaction to whatever it is that they did. And so right now, even in their adulthood, even in their marriage, when they do something wrong, even though they know it is wrong, they struggle to admit and say, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I did that. Because they're scared. That inner child in them is still scared that when I say I'm wrong, what's going to happen? Might I be left? Might my spouse perhaps do something catastrophic just as was done to me when I was younger? And so they become very defensive. They become difficult to actually admit, hey, I messed up there, because they were never given the environment whereby it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you're a messed up person. It just means that you are human and you are capable of falling short. So if indeed that is you, it's okay. It's okay. And if indeed your spouse is that individual who is scared of admitting wrong because of the perceived consequences that might come later, assure that spouse that, hey, just because you were wrong doesn't mean I'm leaving. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Doesn't mean that it cancels out every single good thing you've done in my life throughout the years. That I love you and I'm here to make you a better person, and I'm here to mold you towards being a better version of yourself. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make blunders. Improve. Perhaps your personality was shaped by your experiences in your childhood and your upbringing. Perhaps you became an introvert. You became introverted because you grew up in an environment whereby your opinion did not matter. People never cared for your emotions. People were never there for you. So you've learned to be independent. You've learned to hush, to keep quiet, not to speak and express your thoughts. So even in marriage, even in your family, you're not speaking. Even in your own home now, as an adult, you're not expressing your thoughts. You're keeping it to yourself. You are suppressing your own emotions because that is the environment you grew up in. So check yourself. There is something that we call nurture versus nature. Nurture is how you were brought up, how the environment shaped you as you were growing up. So were you shaped not to communicate? Were you shaped to keep things to yourself? Were you shaped not to depend on anyone? And is that how you are operating in your marriage? Yet you do have a spouse who cares. You do have a spouse who wants to hear you out. You do have a spouse who wants to know, if I've hurt you, communicate. But there you are, locking yourself, keeping things to yourself, building a wall, and you're making it difficult for your spouse to get through to you. Your upbringing can also make you rigid when it comes to culture. You start making statements such as, in our culture, we don't do this. Where I come from, we don't do this. Now we need to appreciate that marriage is the coming together of two distinct cultures. The coming together of two distinct ways of life. And so it is these two distinct ways of life coming together to build a new culture. Because culture is made by human beings. Culture keeps on evolving. Culture keeps on being updated based on the current experiences. So you can take what is good from where you come from. You can take what is good from where your spouse comes from. And then you can create a hybrid culture that makes both of you feel like, you know what? My experiences are being considered in this marriage. My expectations are being considered in this marriage. Do not be so rigid. And sometimes you need to interrogate the culture that you were raised up in. Ask yourself, is this culture only serving me whilst hurting my spouse or my children? If that's the case, then drop it. But if this culture that I was brought up in is helping me be a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, then by all means embrace it. By all means take it. Whatever input that you can put in your marriage to make you a better spouse and a better parent, by all means incorporate it. So don't be so rigid. Have that flexibility to accommodate your spouse. Have that flexibility to accommodate the realities of the present day. Don't be stuck following culture that were imposed or that were developed hundreds of years ago that perhaps today are not serving the best interests of your marriage and your family. Cute, right? Your upbringing can also affect your parenting. As a parent, please listen. How are you mothered? How are you fathered by your own parents? Was it a pleasant experience? Were you brought up in fear or brought up in love? Was the discipline to make you better, or was the discipline to inflict punishment in you? Now, if you do not heal, there are two things that might happen. You might either go to the extreme whereby you do the same nasty parenting that was done to you. Your discipline is punishment to your children. You are harsh because your parents did not tell you, I love you, I am proud of you, we thank God for you. So you don't even tell your children those same words. You don't appreciate, you don't validate, you don't love on your children with words and actions simply because you don't know any better, since that was how you were parented. Or you can go to the other extreme because your parents were so tough on you. Now you go to the extreme of being fully lenient. You let your children get away with anything. You don't discipline them. You give them whatever it is that they want. You shower them with all this stuff in an unhealthy way, instead of finding that balance and realizing that as a parent, yes, discipline has to be there, but it's discipline not born out of punishment, but discipline with the goal of building character, building understanding, discipline that's communicated. That even as parents, yes, communicate love. It is good to correct your children, but don't just be correcting. Let it not be that the only time you're speaking to your children, it is criticism. You're not good enough. Why are we taking you to school? You know what? No. Have those moments whereby you can tell your child wonderful things about them, because your voice matters the most to your children. And especially when they are living under your roof. And even after they've left from living under your roof, they still need that. Because this world can be tough. This world can have a lot of distractions. This world can have a lot of views. But yours means a lot to your child. Your upbringing can affect your parenting. And so, however your childhood was, however your upbringing was, it is time to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Learn the good things from your childhood. Learn the good things from your parents. And learn some of the bad traits that perhaps you encountered, the traumas that you encountered. And relearn some of the lessons that perhaps you might have missed along the way. Whatever it is that your parents did, forgive them. Whatever it is that your parents did good, appreciate them, celebrate them. It is very possible to honor your parents while still acknowledging that they were humans, capable of falling short, capable of letting you down, and capable also of not giving the kind of things that you needed from them as parents. Because sometimes the truth is, parents can end up hurting us not because of the bad things they do, but the good things they failed to say or do. So it is time for you to interrogate your upbringing, your childhood, and learn from that so that it doesn't affect your today, it doesn't affect your future, and most importantly, it doesn't negatively affect the family that you are building now as an adult. Learn, unlearn, relearn.
This is Grown TV.